So in this video, we're going to talk about some reasons why some people might make more money than others, and we're going to get into a dangerous discussion of income differences due to gender between men and women, with a particular focus on the United States. So let's talk about this idea about why some people make more than others, and this is an important topic when you're talking about income inequality. When you're talking about income inequality, most of the time when people talk about computing measures of income inequality, like Gini coefficients and things like that, they're talking about household income inequality. Now, this is a problem because you have to understand what a household is, and households differ very much. First, talk about what a household is. It's all the people who occupy a housing unit. Okay, well, what's a housing unit mean then? Well, here's a paraphrase of the official U.S. definition when we collect data on these things. A housing unit is a house, an apartment, a mobile home, a group of rooms, or a single room that is occupied as separate living quarters. Separate living quarters, that means that people live and eat separately from others in the building, have direct access from the outside of the building or through a common hall. Occupants may be a single family, or one person living alone, or two or more families living together, or any other group of related or unrelated people sharing living arrangements. So this is a household. Now there's another possibility outside of a household called group quarters. This might be if you're in the military and you live with other people in some sort of group room and you all eat together. That would be considered a non-household living arrangement if you were in the military like that, or perhaps if you were in a prison. But thinking about all the things that are a household, it's anybody from a student living in a dorm room to a mansion where several generations of people might live, with many, many different income earners living under the same roof in the same household. So because of these differences, we're not taking into account whether someone's retired, whether someone's a student and they're not working and they have no or very little income on purpose. These measures of household income inequality, they're fine as long as you understand the restrictions. One other problem with using household income inequality, especially comparing over time, is that what is a household today is very different from what is a household in years past. In 1960, the average household in the United States was about 3.3 people, and in 2010, it's about 2.58 people. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller as time goes on, as fewer people get married, and as more people decide just to live by themselves. So a large percentage of households, much larger today than in the past, are just one person living by themselves, instead of what we might typically think of in a romantic kind of historical bygone era, where there's a mother and a father, and maybe in the 1980s or something, maybe they both had incomes. A lot of households now don't look like that. That's not really the typical household at all anymore. But let's get beyond the idea of the problem of measuring incomes in households, and let's just talk about individual people. So here's a proposition for you to think about. Do you agree with this statement or not? That all people should make the same amount of money per year, no matter what. Now, for some of you, you might think this is a crazy thing to throw out there, that everyone should make the same amount of money no matter what. But a lot of people agree with this proposition. I've met many people over my lifetime that agree with this. All people should make the same amount of money per year, no matter what. So if you agree with this statement, we really don't have anything else to discuss, because to you, there's no justifiable reason why two people should make different amounts of money. Now, if you can imagine some scenarios where maybe it would be okay if one person earns more than another, can we maybe discuss some possible acceptable reasons why maybe some people should make more than others? Maybe some people should be paid more than others, at least on a yearly or a weekly or a monthly basis. Let's discuss some possible reasons why. And you don't have to agree with all these, but let me just bring up some possibilities here. Now, since I'm an economist, I have to just take 1 second and mention that in theory, at least, What people should be paid should be related to their marginal revenue product. In other words, if I hire you and you are able to produce, say, 100 extra units of something, and I can sell those somethings for $20 a piece, then what I should pay you should be very close to the 100 units times $20 or $2,000 that you were able to earn the company. Although, for practical reasons, it's often going to be a little less than that, especially if there are other costs associated with hiring you or other costs with me providing you equipment or benefits. So let's look at a few people. Should these people maybe get paid less than average? What about a newborn baby? They're a person. Should they make the same amount as someone who's 50 years old? What about somebody who is able-bodied and of able mind, and they decide they just don't feel like working? They don't want to work, and should we pay them the same amount as somebody who works? What about somebody who has a really pleasant, really easy job? Maybe your job is house sitting, where if someone's going to be out of town for 2 or 3 months, you go and live in their house and you watch it just to make sure that it doesn't get robbed, it doesn't burn down, and there's not a leak. And that's your job, to stay in someone's house and just, watch TV and make sure nothing bad happens. Should you get paid the same amount as somebody who doesn't have such a nice, pleasant job? What about somebody who has a job, but they're just really sloppy? They don't do a good job. They're very rude to customers. They're rude to their fellow employees. They're not a pleasant person to work with, or if you're a customer, to deal with. And what if this person is always late showing up to work? Should they get paid less, or should they get paid the same amount? Let's think about some people. Is there a justifiable reason why they should get paid more? What about if somebody's in a risky job or a dangerous job? Maybe what you do, you might risk your life, you might risk your health, or you might just be risking your money. Maybe you start a business thinking this is your dream, to start a business, to have a new product, or to start a band, or to be an artist, and you're risking everything to maybe make it big. Should you possibly deserve more if you're risking your life? What if you're just somebody who does a really good job? If you are more productive and you can make more food or make more computer programs or just do a great job teaching, or you're a great artist, should you make more money than somebody who's a terrible artist and has no talent for singing or dancing or with what you're doing? What about if somebody gets more education? What if somebody spends, like I did, 11 years of their life being a poor student? After you get done with all that education, should you make more than somebody who doesn't spend all that time getting that education? Something to think about. What if somebody works 80 hours a week? Should they get paid more than someone who works 40 hours or 10 hours or 5 hours a week? And as I alluded to before, what if somebody risks their savings? They borrow money against their house in order to invest in a business. That business might do well, and if so, maybe they should make a lot of money. If they have a good business that really serves people and does a good job for people, but they're really risking everything, maybe they will lose everything. Should they have the possibility of earning more if they succeed? What if somebody lives in a place where it just costs more to live? What if you live in Alaska where it costs a lot of money to have a house that is resistant to the cold, and just costs more to buy food, and it costs more to heat your house in the winter? Perhaps maybe you agreed with that proposition before, that everyone should make the same amount of money. Maybe there are some things here that have made you reconsider that. I hope so. So maybe there are some justifiable reasons why some people at the end of the year, if they add up all their earnings, maybe they make more than someone else. But maybe you still are doubtful. Whether you agree or not that some of these are legitimate reasons, let's delve into some of these things and see if we can break down some reasons why some people make more than others. Some people work more hours than others. And so this is a paper by Peter Kuhn and Fernando Lozano. This is a National Bureau of Economic Research working paper, and I pulled a couple of graphs from the paper. On the left, we have a graph for men who are paid hourly, and on the right, we have a graph for men who are on a salary. And is there a relationship between how many hours these people usually work? And these are people who work full time. So usual weekly hours, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65. If you work hourly, the more you work, the more you make. This is the logarithm of weekly earnings on the left. So higher numbers mean you make more money. Over here, even if you work on a salary where you don't, under contract, get paid more for working more, we see a relationship where as you work 45, 50, 55, 60, 65 hours per week on average, you make more money. And the two different graphs here are 2000 to 2002 is the top line, and 1983 to 1985 is the bottom line. No matter which period we look at, we see this relationship. If you work more hours per week, you make more money in a week. And to me, that seems like that's justified. Now, let's tackle a dangerous subject. And I know I'm probably going to get in trouble with somebody for discussing this. Let's see what are some of the differences between men and women. There's a phrase that comes up a lot when you discuss this, that a woman in the United States earns 77 cents for every dollar that a man earns in the United States. Now, a lot of times this phrase is said incorrectly. This phrase is said that a woman earns 77 cents for doing the exact same job as a man, but that is not true. That is absolutely not true, even though that is how it is phrased many times in the news or by many pundits that are out there. So let's investigate this 77 cents and see what are some differences between men and women that may or may not justify the difference in how much they earn. Discrimination? Yes. Definitely there is gender discrimination in addition to racial discrimination out there. Is that a factor? The answer is yes, but it's a small part of it. The studies that I see, and this is a big area of study for economists, the studies I see would say that maybe about 10% of the difference, maybe 20% of the difference on the outside of the pay differences between men and women appears to be discrimination of some sort or another, but the rest of it can be explained in some other way. And again, whether you accept those other reasons as being legitimate or not, that's okay. We can agree or we can disagree on those things, but 23-cent differential, not all of that is discrimination. There are some reasons we can look at that explain those. And again, you might not like those reasons, I might not like those reasons, but let's delve into those reasons. So where there is discrimination that is definitely unacceptable, we're on the same page there. I'm not trying to argue that discrimination is ever a good thing, but I'm trying to just have a discussion about what are some of these differences. Are there any acceptable reasons for some of this difference? We'll start to explore this. First possible difference, are there differences in educational attainment? Like maybe more men get higher levels of education, more master's degrees, more bachelor's degrees. Maybe more men graduate from high school. Nope, that's not the case. So that can't help us explain any of this difference. Women are actually more likely in the United States to graduate from high school, get associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, master's, and doctorate degrees even. Here's some data. So this is from 2014 to 2015 from the National Center for Education Statistics in the United States. We see here that more females in that year 2014 to 2015 got bachelor's degrees than males, more got master's degrees than males, more got doctorate degrees than males. So this is just getting degrees in that year. Now, if we look at the entire history of older people, then yes, there still are some differences in maybe 50 or 60-year-olds between the number of men who have master's degrees and doctoral degrees, definitely. But currently, a lot of that ground is being made up to where now we maybe ought to be a little concerned about the huge differential between men not graduating from high school, not getting bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, or doctoral degrees at the same rate. But this doesn't help explain this difference where men are making more than women. Let's dig deeper then. What about differences in working part-time versus full-time? Could that help explain some of the difference in earnings? Yes, it actually does seem to be a big difference. Looking at some data from the 2016 CPS, Current Population Survey, here's what we see. When we look at men and women employed full-time or part-time, about 75% of women who are working are employed full-time, almost 25% employed part-time. Men, 88% are working full-time versus only about 12.5% employed part-time. So about twice as many women working part-time compared to men. If women are earning less money per month or per year, that might help explain some of that difference. Now, yes, there are a lot of other ways we could break down this data. Some of these women might want to work full-time, but they're just not given the opportunity. I agree. I'm with you there. But if we just want to explain on the face of it, this number, average earnings for men are higher, here is something that helps us understand it at least. What about compensating differentials? Now, compensating differentials is what economists call differences in earnings, difference in wages, based on the riskiness of jobs, the discomfort of jobs, or the unpleasantness of doing a certain job. So risk to your life and limb is very understandable. Discomfort might mean the difference between working on a roof in the summer versus working sitting in an air-conditioned office during the summer, or a job just being unpleasant. You know, having a job where you're taking care of children and you're playing with them and you're laughing and you're having a good time versus a kind of job where you're a bill collector. It's just distasteful. It's just not a pleasant job being a bill collector. Compensating differentials are the idea that people need to be paid more to do risky or dangerous or unpleasant jobs. There are a lot of ways we could look at this, but one simplistic way of looking at compensating differentials is just in risk of being on the job. If we look at the people who died on the job in the United States in 2015, if this is any measure of risk, 93% of the people who died on the job in 2015 were men, the other 7% were women. Now, there are all kinds of other differences we'll explore in a few minutes here, but this is one clear difference that perhaps if men are taking these more dangerous jobs, might it be more legitimate that they get paid more for risking their life? I'll leave it up to you as to what the final answer is. So let's look at some different job choices and different degree choices of men and women. And I think this will help us understand some of these differences in earnings. Again, whether you believe these are legitimate differences or not, I leave to you, but let's just explore some of the data and see what we can see. So here's some data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It gives lots and lots and lots of different job titles here. I have figured out from the number of men and women what percent of each of these job titles are held by women, and thus what percent are held by men. We could also break this down by race if we wanted to, but today our focus is on men versus women. What kind of different jobs do they have? So let me just go to this column here for percent women, and just for simplicity's sake, let's sort this from largest percentage to smallest percentage. And again, I'm not saying these people should be paid less, but they are. And if we think about compensating differentials, maybe this helps us understand perhaps some of this is legitimate. So preschool and kindergarten teachers, they're not paid very much. And I think they should probably be paid more because they are very important. 97.5% of preschool and kindergarten teachers are women. And you might say, well, gosh, that's just because women are discriminated against. Women are brainwashed. They're encouraged to go into these kinds of jobs. Hey, maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. But they're not paid very much. Part of that is because they typically will work 9 months out of the year. Typically, this is a more pleasant job than, say, being a roofer or being a plumber or being a garbage person. So not paid very much, and this is one of the most common jobs. Also, speech language pathologists, 97.5% women. And again, most of these, I would guess, would be working in a school system with kids, and we know that these teachers are underpaid. Dental hygienists, again, in the United States, I don't know how it is in the country where you live, but dental hygienists in the United States are typically women and the dentists are typically men. And we know that the dentists are going to get paid more than the dental hygienists. Another category here, dental assistants, 93.3% women. Dental hygienists, 97.1%. I don't know what the difference there is, but they're not going to be making a lot of money. Now, nurse practitioners do make quite a bit of money, 94% women, but they don't make as much money as, say, a doctor would. And still, when it comes to medical doctors, a higher percentage are men than women, although women are catching up there. Secretaries and administrative assistants, 94.6% women. Child care workers, vast majority women. And these aren't very high-paying jobs. Hairdressers and hairstylists, medical records technicians. I'm not sure. Maybe that's a good-paying job. Payroll clerks, receptionists, registered nurses do get paid pretty well. But I've known a lot of registered nurses in the United States, and they work extremely hard for their money. 90% women. Licensed practical nurses, also 90% women. These are nurses that don't have quite as long of an educational credential record as a registered nurse does, so paid less than a registered nurse. Still not a bad job. Maids and housekeepers, not getting paid a lot. Dietitians, teacher assistants. As we go down the list here, occupational therapists, word processors, bookkeepers, not accountants, but bookkeepers aren't going to get paid as much. Home health aides, paralegals, phlebotomists, people who draw your blood, library assistants. Most of these jobs we're looking at here are not what we would normally think about as the high income earning professions. Now let's sort this the other way for low percent women jobs. So sort smallest to largest, and let's have a look. Brick masons, probably not the highest paying job, but a decent job in many places. Heavy vehicle operators and mechanics, electric line installers and repairers, probably make a decent amount of money. Hard work, but very, very few women in those jobs. Crane operators, bus and truck mechanics, diesel engine specialists, sound like specialist jobs where you might make a good amount of money. Logging, drywall installers, probably not extremely high paying there. Very low percentage of women. Mining machine operators, generally mining jobs pay a lot. They're very risky, but very, very large percentage men there, 98.5% men. Roofers, aircraft mechanics. Let's expand this one. So all kinds of mechanic jobs, mostly men, security and fire alarm installers, iron and steel workers. These are mostly blue-collar jobs we're talking about here, but some of them are unionized and some of them are going to make more than, say, the preschool teachers and kindergarten teacher type and secretaries and receptionist jobs that we were looking at before. Carpenters can make a lot of money. Concrete finishers can make a lot of money in some cases. Electricians can have really nice jobs. Tool and die makers. This is a high-paying job many times. Machinists, firefighters. And some of the differences here are due to training. Some of it is due to the fact that these are unpleasant or dangerous jobs that we're seeing here. Computer control programmers and operators, aerospace engineers, construction managers. So we're kind of getting the idea. Many of these are not great jobs, but they're outdoors. They may be dangerous. Some of them do require some specialized training, and they're kind of hard jobs, and some of them seem like they would make more money. So that might explain some of the difference. And again, you might not agree that these are legitimate differences. Why is it that a carpenter would make more money than a speech pathologist in a school, for example? I don't know. That's something that we can discuss as a society, why that might be. But that might not be the case. I don't know. Let's look at some cases where we're looking at college degrees here. Let me zoom in here. So this is data from two places combined. 2012 National Center for Education Statistics in the United States, in the Department of Education, and the National Association of Colleges and Employers Salary Survey from 2016. Where I could, I put in the mean starting salaries for these degrees. So let's look at the most popular master's degrees for men and women. Let me zoom in one more step here. Most popular for men and women are both in MBA, Business Administration degree. Starting salary is pretty high, $77,700. But many, many more men, 22.3% of all master's degrees for men are in MBA. About half that for women, only about 11%. In the number 2 slot, electrical engineering, number 2 for men, very high income potential. Number 2 for women, education, much, much, much lower, 50,000 compared to 75,000 here. Number 3 for men, educational leadership. This is also on the list over here for women. I couldn't find a good figure for master's degrees in educational leadership, what they start at. Typically, this degree is someone who works in a school system. They're a teacher, for example, and they want to move up the chain to become an assistant principal or a principal. They will get a master's degree or a PhD in leadership or educational leadership. Pretty common for men, little less common for women. Well, actually, when you look at the number of women here, right? Number of women, higher absolute number than for men. But as we said earlier, more women are getting master's degrees than men right now. So, not sure exactly how to interpret that. Business and commerce, I'm guessing this is just some other kind of degree like an MBA. So I couldn't find any specific information on what those degrees actually mean, how the National Center for Education Statistics categorizes those. Master's degree in education for men here, like women, but a lot fewer men are getting those master's degrees in education. Accounting, 63,000. Masters in public administration, computer science, mechanical engineering, and computer sciences round out the list for men. For women, social work, elementary education, special education. Most of these seem like they're very low-paying jobs, except perhaps nursing, right? Now let's look at bachelor's degrees for men and women here. Business for men, finance, biology, political science, accounting, and then psychology for men. And here are the associated yearly starting salary figures. For women, psychology number 1, a lot lower than the top few for men here, although business for women is number 2. Nursing pays fairly well, but less than these top 3 for men. And then we get to elementary education. Very low paying job. I'm not saying that they should be paid that amount, but, and here biology and biological sciences, on the list for men here. But here we have English, accounting, similar to men, good, lower place though. Communication, not going to pay quite as much as some of these degrees over here, like mechanical engineering. Sociology and liberal arts. What I did just kind of for informational purposes here, I said, well, let's take this top 10 for men and the top 10 for women over here, and let's calculate the weighted average salary for these men and these women, starting salary, and we get over 51,000 for the men. We get just over 46,000, about 46,650 for the women. And if we're talking about how many cents on the dollar you get, well, here we're looking at 91 cents on the dollar when we compare women's starting salaries out of college to men's starting salaries out of college, just based on the choice of major. That explains almost half of this difference that we see. And then we get into the other things that we were talking about before. The type of job you take, the type of occupation you choose. Just because you have a certain kind of degree doesn't mean that's going to be the kind of career that you choose. So I don't know. This is where I'm going to end this video. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm not saying that a degree in English should necessarily get paid less than a degree in business. I'm not saying that your personal worth is less. But this is the market reality, that these degrees that women are choosing get paid less. What do you think? Is this all due to some kind of social conditioning, that little girls are taught that they should like different things? Is it nurture in that sense, or is it nature? Is it that women are just naturally, genetically different? They have different preferences. I'd like to hear your answers. I'm not a geneticist, I'm not a biologist, so I don't know. But what are your opinions? So when we go back to this idea, that a woman earns 77 cents for every dollar a man earns in the United States, yes, some of it is discrimination. Some of it seems to be based on the type of career and the working conditions and the risk involved. Some of it seems to be involved with the educational choices that are made. So there are differences there, whether they're justified or not, whether this is some problem that needs to be fixed, I don't know. So if we are conditioning, teaching girls that they shouldn't like science, they shouldn't like business, or they shouldn't like math, if we are doing that in this country, I think we should stop it. On the other hand, if men and women just naturally have different preferences, if that's the case, I don't know that we should somehow try to twist people's arms and force them into career decisions or force them into educational choices that they don't want to make. But that's just my opinion. Please tell me if I'm wrong. I'd be happy to hear from you, and I'd be happy to be convinced in another way. But again, I don't know exactly why some of these things are. A lot of times when you look at the data, it raises more questions than it brings up answers. So I'm going to end this video here. As always, good luck in your economic studies, everybody. Talk to you later.